Hello, everyone. It's Burgess Novak. I'm so glad to talk with you today. We're here to talk about how to handle loss. I did a radio show on this several weeks ago, and there's more to say. Certainly, it's on my mind because recently we lost another dear friend of ours, a man named Hannes, a very, very old friend, a vital man who passed away, believe it or not, on a volleyball court. That shows you he was a good physical specimen, right? He always had a twinkle in his eye. So he's on my mind today. And as you know, if you followed the show at all, we've had several losses in our family recently. And so I want to talk with you about some other things. This is an addendum to the first show we did several weeks ago. We're awfully glad you're with us today. If you are on Blog Talk Radio or if you're on Facebook Live, you're going to hear me say hello, like I'm going to say hello to Lisa right now, and thank you so much for watching. If you hear me say things like that, just know that is certainly in passing, and that I'm very grateful for all our listeners, for the subjects at hand, and for the way this world works, even though it doesn't feel good sometimes, you know. So, right now, why don't we do a prayer to get us all on the same page, and then we're going to start into our show on how to handle loss. As usual, our call-in number is 347-850-1647. I cannot say that we'll be able to bring you on, but we are working on this so that we get a better signal. So please know that I'm really trying to do that. We're having to make some connections in the location we are to do that. And some of our technology is just not available, some of the newest technology in this region. So we're doing the best we can. Just be a little patient with us is all I ask. All right, let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for exactly the way things are, for we know that you are in the middle of it all, and that things are changing and growing, and that nothing is the end of anything. We do know that you are our peace and our happiness and our joy and our creativity. Hello, Dwayne. And we thank you so much for all of this. We now open to see, hear, sense, and know things beyond what we currently know. That's consciousness itself, isn't it, dear God? We open ourselves to that, and we say now that God is good, and we ask to open our understanding that we may actually see it. Give us the things that we may implement, dear God, to make our lives better and soothe ourselves, not in the old way. That's Facebook Live. Now we're back on Facebook Live. That's what I mean. We may just have to go back and forth for a while. Hopefully everything. That we are going to have a happier life doing this. But it's the ego child's mind. Now, you're going to hear me talk about the ego child's mind because there are two selves inside of us, you see. There is a child's mind self, we call it the egoic child's mind, that is developed about 18 months old at the same time the ego is developed. And this is the part of us that still sees life and thinks of ourselves and all of life and God and everything as the child did. Now, this is a fear-based self, but there's another self too, which is the potential we're talking about as human beings, that is the highest self. Now, the interesting thing is this ego child's mind self is God. It's still God, even though it believes in lack. And it sees everything as tragic and bad and as scary. But there's another part of us that is the highest mind, and this is the love-based part of us that is all God. And it is the part of us that we have access to and privilege to as we move through our lives and our consciousness expands and opens. One the ego child's mind is a low vibrational, just trying to survive kind of energy. And the highest mind is a putting everything in its proper perspective place, where we are certainly more adaptable, and we know the answers are within this dear mind. Losing Facebook, I'm so sorry. The ego child's mind characteristic that I was just referring to is the undeveloped whole, you see? It is in the growing of our minds, it is in the expansion of our minds that we see more and we become the developed whole. That's what consciousness is, of course. So, it is the ego child's mind that equates being happy with good times and good things happening. But I'm here to say that some of my most profound experiences have not felt good at all. And when we realize what's going on in a more global manner, which the ascended mind provides for us, all God, we start to see a pattern. We start to see, okay? Keep in mind that these two ways of God in us, the mind, these two things, and what we are working out of in the moment, things. The egoic child's mind tends to see lack everywhere. And as a child, it sees the things it doesn't have, just like a child. And this is true. It brings more lack. If you see everything, I love that expression, if you're a hammer, you see everything as a nail, right? And I think this is true, because if we're in the ego child's mind, we see everything as lacking. We see everything as deprivation. We don't have enough. We see, even if we have it, we see it going away because we believe in lack. You see? So it is in the ego child's mind where we all start. But sometimes we stay there too long. Good morning. Oh, thank you so much, Lisa. I send love to all of you too. So we all start in the egoic child's mind because we are the undeveloped whole. Our divine privilege is to go from the undeveloped whole to the developed whole. Sometimes we stay in the undeveloped whole, the ego child's mind, too long. And sometimes we stay there our whole lives. But the show is about consciousness and how we can grow past the ego child's mind, that we may live in the grace and goodness and beneficence of God. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about these two minds and what we see in them around loss. The grace and goodness and beneficence of God that I just referred to is not as we envisioned it as children. We grow up in fantasies about God. It is the child's understanding, these fantasies. God's going to fix everything is one of them. God is magical is another. God will reward us if we are all good little boys and girls, and will come down hard on us if we're not. All of those are positive and negative fantasies about God that we hold as children. And somewhere really deep in our psyches, we cannot rely on waiting for Facebook Live. And what do I mean by God's beneficence that we find in this energy? We find peace and love and joy and potential, by the way, and fulfillment because of that potential, and creativity and altruism and much, much more. Now, as children and as adults still living out of the egoic child's mind, and by the way, I have a little abbreviation for that. We call it the ECM in our work, the egoic child's mind. So if you hear me at some point say the ECM, that's what I'm talking about. So as children and as adults working out of the ECM, we do believe in lack. We're afraid of it at our core. We're afraid of lack at our core, even though we believe in it. And because we are, it propels us into certain behaviors. We avoid looking at it. We grasp, we cling to, we're anxious, angry, sad, we overwork, we seek approval from others. Nevertheless, driven in the ECM, true. We're driven by minds based on appearances when we were children. Now, here's the insidious thing. Most of the time, we never express any of this and say them out loud because we're not aware of these things consciously. You see, in the emotional body of us, some things don't make sense. So when we try to rationalize these things with our mental body, we never get to the truth of what we really believe. We hide these feelings away. Hello, Jay. It's so good to hear you on or see you or read your writing on Facebook Live. I'm glad. I'm awfully glad to see you today. So we hide these feelings away that are in the ECM, things that we might not even be aware of. And if we are aware of, we avoid because it doesn't make good cocktail party conversation, does it? No, because it's all based in fear and we're all trying to look good. We put masks on ourselves that, by the way, we ourselves desperately try to believe. But we are not our masks. And at our core, we know it. We are dear, and we are human, and we are flawed. And we do all the things that humans do to find their way home. Now, speaking for myself, I'm going to say again that some of my most profound moments of God, of opening the mind, and of loving more, didn't come in times that felt good. For example, when I've lost someone that I've loved dearly. We've got to get past that childhood thought that to feel God and to know God is with you, it has to feel good. That's simply not true. We have a plethora of animals this morning around here. You're hearing Lamster, who is right below me and has a few things to add to the show today. So what I want to talk about is in those times of whatever kind of loss we are experiencing, we do have two choices. And this is what makes these moments so profound. We can shut down and close up and tell ourselves we believe in nothing, certainly not in a God that we feel allows bad things to happen. And by the way, I want to put on the table that a belief in nothing is a belief in something. So we can't get away from what we believe in, really. And listen to the child's language in that statement that I made previously. Bad things. God allows bad things to happen. Bad things are the child's language. We have to open to our capacity to love more. And by the way, this is another thing that moment of loss provides. It provides the choice to either shut down and to say, I don't believe in this God that lets bad things happen. Or it provides the opening of our capacity to love more and open ourselves in that to be more of who we really are. I pray that's okay. that in times of chaos, we don't know what forward is. I'm going to go back and repeat because Facebook Live just came on again. And what I had just put on the table is that certainly we can shut down in the ego child's mind behaviors. But a far greater love, I think, is the willingness to let go when it's time and to move on and create a life out of the love and lessons we take forward. And now my word that I'm focusing on right now is forward, because in chaos, you can't see what forward really is. Sometimes we don't know, and I want to say that's all right. That's the nature of chaos. The reason that we say that hindsight is 20/20 is you have moved into the new order from the chaos, and that's why we can see more clearly. And you have to trust the chaos. And that's an odd thing for me to say, isn't it? But God is the chaos and the order. Once we have moved past the ego child's mind that tells us that God's just there in the good times and not in the bad. You see? God's everything. And this is where God and physics meet, if you will. Science tells us that there is hidden order in chaos. And I do believe this is so. And to put it in other words, God has you, whether you know it or not. God knows where you are. And if you are open to learning and growing and moving on the opportunities that reveal themselves in this higher energy, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You know, I'm going to tell you, I was talking to a client this week, and she felt useless. A chronic condition for her, by the way. She has struggled all her life with a very rigid personality and tons of OCD rules, regulations, and policies that would probably choke a whale if they swallowed that. She finally, after working on this for many years, thank you, Lisa. After working on all this for many years, she finally heard what I was saying to her. And here's how the conversation went. Anytime I or anyone else suggested something that might enhance her life, change her, open her mind, she would kill it immediately, before any idea had even begun to be entertained, much less developed. She shot it down with assorted objections and excuses. I pointed this out to her, and only this week did she finally see what she was doing. So she said, "What can I do about this? I don't want to be like this anymore." And because my background is theater and film, I suggested something that I think has a lot of life lessons for all of us, and that is improvisation, an improvisation class. Because improvisation is what we're all doing in life. Now, I'm going to draw this back to the subject of loss. Stay with me. Improvisation is what we're doing if we're living well in the world. Okay? It comes from being in this moment, and this moment alone, not being fearful as the child, not project, make life work. The same things that make improvisation work are the same things that make life work for you. So, what are those things? One of them is saying yes to everything, to the possibilities of everything, and then no if you so desire. Instead, what she was doing was saying no to all possibilities and never getting around to saying yes. Many people do this. It's a thing that a child does to protect themselves when they're very fearful. No, 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 no. They've never grown out of their no period. You see? And if you say no to all possibilities, then you don't have any choices, or you certainly have limited ones. So one of the things that a good improvisation does, and we're talking about improvisation as containing wonderful life lessons for us all, whether you take a class on improvisation, or whether you are just improvising in life. Saying yes to all possibilities, and then possibly no if you don't want it, is a much better way to live than saying no to everything and never getting around to yes. Number 2, what makes a good improvisation in life and in the theater is that you suspend all judgment. You simply don't have it. If, for example, in an improvisation, you say to me that it is a beautiful day today, and I say, no, it isn't, you actually don't have any place to go with this. If I say, then it's raining, or if I say, well, that's a stupid thing to say, I've just shut down the improvisation anytime I judge what we're doing. So what you do instead of judging, is you go with, you stay open, you see where it goes. Judgment is when you close the mind. We have to open the mind to all possibilities. We have to be curious. Right? It's part of yes, isn't it? I mentioned this one, but I'm so sorry about Facebook Live coming and going. Here we are. All right. The 4th thing about improvisation in life and in the arts is listening. Now, my client said something very telling to me when we were talking. She said that when she has done improvisation in the past, in a little class here or there, she was never good at it. And I said, why? You should be good at it. Because she's a thinker, she's creative, she sees symbolism, she does all sorts of things like that. I said, why? And she said, because I see all the choices that I can make in the moment. And I get completely locked up thinking which choice I should make. And I said, well, that's all about you. That's all you listening to you. You're not really interacting with somebody else. You're not really listening to them, because I'm going to tell you that gives you a range of reactions, a smaller range of reactions. Listening is a very important part of this. Now, I do say that many of us are listening a little too much to ego child's mind ideas out there in the world. And I think as one does the work on oneself around loss or anything else, we have to come to realize and trust that if God is indeed everything in the world, in high and low degrees, like we talked about, then God really is all we are, and that we should contact that energy beyond the ego child's mind that is our internal knowing, our internal lovingness, and learn to trust it and learn to go with that. And then we'll always know what to say, because we have listened to the inner. By the way, science is showing us that there is a positive kind of stress that does propel us forward, whatever forward means. And there is a negative kind of stress that really shuts us down. In other words, if you are feeling and dealing with stress from the ego child's mind, you're going to react one way. And if you are coming from the highest self mind, this loving God that we all are, they're both God, but one is in high and a lot of potential. So we were just saying, because Facebook Live went down again, the open system is a system that shares a lot of information with its environment. information it can use or discard. It comes in from everywhere. And there's great growth in this kind of energy because of the opportunities inherent in the open system. But the closed system, on the other hand, is more closed to its environment. Not much can happen to it. Now, it's so interesting to me because the child's mind, the ego child's mind that we've been talking about, innately knows of these two systems. It does. And it goes about, as a child, in the child's mind, protecting itself to make themselves the closed system in order to do so and do so well. So they're protected from life now as the closed system, so they and so they feel they're protected. You see, it's about on the stories we were told as children. And we should look back on the stories that we were told as children, and we should reread the original story. It holds a key to what we still believe and we've forgotten or don't want to admit. We were just talking, Facebook Live was down for quite a while this time. So what I have just been talking about is that we cannot look back, but we often do. We can't look back and wish it was a different way. I said in death it's a closed door, but in the case of divorce and separation or job loss or whatever the loss that has happened, we still have to continue to move on. But we said, why is it so hard? And my point was that a lot of us have not admitted that we really are investing in our ego child's mind. Therefore, we consider ourselves still children that need to be taken care of. We haven't fully accepted our responsibility as adults. We haven't had the opportunity to work through our problems, and it is the working through of things that we prove we have the answers inside of us because God is there. And God gives us the answers. But again, not if we're the ego child's mind. And the ego child's mind is a very selfish experience. We want God, some magical being, to come down into our lives and make everything our fantasy. And that's not the way it works. What happens is we must mature of mind and merge with the mind of our ascended selves. And therefore we see things in a more global perspective. We understand the energy of God more. And what's on my mind is, here it is again. Your favorite story was Elizabeth Ann and the Raggedy Man. I don't know that story, but here is what I suggest, Lisa. Go back and read it in the light of consciousness, in the light of what it's really saying to you. And please listen to last week. I think you did, as a matter of fact. But it's very important to see what these stories might have said to us that are not in our best interest to believe anymore, you know? Several years ago, talking about the closed mind, and that's what we are talking about right now, being children and wanting to be taken care of. I heard a talk show. This man that called in had lost his job. I don't remember whether he was fired. I think he was downsized. And the talk show host was trying to help him. And the talk show host said, well, what are your skills? Have you thought of doing this? Have you thought of doing that? Have you thought of going back to school to learn this? That's an adjunct of that. And every single time the talk show host said a suggestion, this man said, oh, well, you know, they didn't develop us in this business. They should have all along. Oh, they didn't do this or that. Oh, if they had just done this, I would still have a job. There was nothing about present time. There was nothing about now and his potential and going forward and doing what he needed to do now. It was all about yearning for the past. This was a man that needed to be taken care of. He needed someone to take care of him. And guys, we're coming out of that mindset now. This is one of the things that I talk about in my book, The Life You Want. This is the age of individual consciousness. The church is being questioned in the traditional sense. The government is being questioned in the traditional sense. The family is changed here in 2018. You can argue that it's good or bad. It depends on what mind you're in. We're going somewhere with all this. The businesses that were supposed to take care of you all changed. Everything is changing. We have to be adaptable. We have to I do believe that all this change and all this argument right now in the world is about turning to the inner, finding out who God really is to you. Think is going to, in some intrinsic way, have value. In other words, we don't just want to take a class and say, I don't like it, and shut the door. This woman that I was telling you about earlier, my client that I love very much, took her improv experience and said, I don't like it, I can't do it, and shut the door. One thing evolves out of another. If it was good for her, and of course she didn't think it was good for her because it challenged what she needed to drop, right? That one should stick with it. Let something come from something. You see. And number 4 in our list of why staying in the moment and doing what we're recommending is so hard is that we are ashamed sometimes of not knowing something. Well, I'm going to tell you, human beings don't know from time to time. That's right. Sometimes we don't know. Here's the problem, though. We use that as a self-attack. And this is why you can't just be content, well, I don't know. I'm going to put that question out there and I'm going to find out. That's really all that's going on, right? But instead, we say, I don't know enough. I've never known enough. I'm dumb. I can't possibly know. I'm less of a person because everybody else knows. Yes, is what this is all about when dealing with loss. We want you adaptable. Adaptable in all of life. And then loss is easier for you, you see? So let's talk about some more things that will help now that I've got you back on Facebook Live. You've got to develop an emotional vocabulary. I always recommend an emotional sheet. Go to the internet and pull out a sheet of as many words that describe emotion as possible. They all fall under 2 emotions, love or fear, by the way. But pull these words out. And when you're feeling something, not just high emotion, but when you're sitting down talking to a friend or loving on your cat, what I want you to do is pull out that emotions sheet and say, what am I feeling? And choose the words. If you don't have an emotional vocabulary, you don't know how to describe what you're feeling so you can get beyond what you're feeling. You see? Emotions are not there to cause us pain. They're signposts that we should look at something deeper. That's all emotions are there for. It's a signpost. I am feeling anxious right now. Then you go, why am I feeling anxious? I'm feeling anxious because I'm anticipating loss, if it's going with the subject that we're talking about right now. Here's the emotion. So, the point is to open the mind. Let's start realizing what emotion is there for. It's a signpost that takes us into deeper questions so we can free ourselves once and for all into the present time. Because you realize what I just said as an example of the breakdown was all about the past. Yeah, it was. Number 2, we need to talk about emotion to trusted others. Now, that doesn't mean just tell everybody, but it does mean to trusted others. The ego child's mind is the part of you that avoids emotion, that doesn't use it as a signpost, that doesn't ask those deeper questions. It hides itself and its insecurities from other people. So, what if you get it all out in the open with these trusted others and you learn to work through everything? What is there to be afraid of then? You're saying that you can't do it, that this working through? I say that's still an ECM thought. You haven't learned how. You cannot let those insecurities in your ego child's mind, and by the way, in everybody else's ego child's mind, stop you. The information is out there. You learn to work through, because every single time you're afraid and you hold yourself back, you are proving to yourself there's something to hold yourself back from, and that your fear is real, and it's not. It just is, because it's part of all of us. You see? Many transcend the egoic child's mind. We're talking about number 3 now. In consciousness work, you will transcend the ego child's mind and see everything from a higher and more global perspective. The job loss, for example, is just the movement by God to expand, learn, grow, and be happier. There's a good example. We see the job loss and we self-attack. That's the ego child's mind. I'm not good enough. I wasn't enough. They didn't think I was valuable. I'm expendable. I'm redundant. Whatever you're going to say to yourself, which is a self-attack. That's why we feel so bad. You just lost a job because God was moving you. Let's go find something that's a better match. You see? We're all going to be happier. But sometimes we have to meet those pockets and of unhappiness on the way. And we're fine unless we think God's there in the good times and not in the bad. And then all of a sudden we freak out. Your ECM is the only thing telling you you are not valuable, that you are not strong enough, that you are wrong. And more damaging things it tells you. And many times you never get to these things unless you're reading those signposts and asking, why do I believe this? I do believe this. Why do I believe this? And drilling down to see why. We must get to the place in us where we can think higher thoughts and stop the self-attack. And this allows you to open the mind and have more creative ideas, which, by the way, are going to... You can't create anything from fantasy. Is its own develop. Everyone certainly is not going to feel the way you do. They're not even going to feel the way we talk about things here. Now, another name for this is fantasy. Remember, fantasy is its own reward. Because in truth, everybody gets to do what they need to do. They need to live and die the way they need. So we're only responsible for the way we do it. Now, that said, it's marvelous to have whatever age you are. The wonderful thing is your job is to know more and to be happy and to realize that really no one can help you be happy. It's all about you. You are the sustaining factor in your happiness. You taking the responsibility for making yourself happy and loving and at peace. The next point I'd like to make is to work on having that open mind we talk about. Work on saying yes to everything. I tell this story, and I think it's a good one. My husband is Austrian, and let me tell you, as a culture, Austrians are a bit cynical, and they say no to everything. So I would say, darling, would you like a cup of tea? And Michael would say, no. Yes. And I said, why don't we reverse that? Why don't you say yes to everything and then possibly no? And he started doing things, and life indeed changed. Work on the open mind. Be curious. Confront your negative thinking and your negative anticipating. Again, read that signpost, see where it goes. And I also want to warn you about staying out of reactivity. When people first start doing their spiritual work, they'll say, I will succeed, for example. And when there is that kind of adamancy, be suspicious of that, because consciousness and the real joy of succeeding is quiet. It's not that hand in your air as God as my witness thing that Scarlett O'Hara did in Gone with the Wind. As God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again, as she raised the radish. Put the radish down, kids, because it's not going to get you anywhere. What that kind of reactivity shows you is that you really don't believe you can have it. Well, confront that. Let's get that thinking straight. And I also want to suggest to you that you be enormously patient with yourself. Getting over loss of whatever kind does take time. One day you're fine, the next day you cry in the shower. I know that's true for me. But it gets better and better as the days go by. And grow who you really are. You're living this poor technology. So while I have Facebook Live that just came back up again, may I suggest to you that you go back and listen to the show on Blog Talk Radio so you can hear the whole thing. I think it stayed up today. And I just don't know what to say. Thank you so much, Janos. That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you're listening today. I think Blog Talk Radio did stay up all day long today, so you can find this under my name, Martha Burgess Novak. I do want to say to all of you that I appreciate your listening. We're here every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are trying to get our technology to work. We've got some ideas. We're trying to implement them. We try one thing after another. And, Janos. Oh, that's wonderful. Listening from Vienna. Hi. Yes, hi to you, too. I know quite well who you are. Thank you. We loved having you here, too. Darlings, we have an app out there I want you to know about because we're trying to get a lot of this information out, make it pretty easy for you. It's for iPhones. It's called the Teacup Prophecies. It's available on the App Store for 99 cents. And it is my second book. If you prefer having the book in hand, you can buy the Teacup Prophecies and my first book, The Life You Want, on my website, which is Martha Burgess Novak, Novak, .net. I'm a .net, not a .com. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your listening to the show. I don't know, but I think I might re-record this so we can have a better quality, the same show. I'll try to put that on the air tomorrow or the next day without all the me complainings about. Dear God, all the rest, thank you so much for this information and for what we're doing. We're all trying to be happy. We're all trying to open our consciousness now to a deeper level of the experience of who we really are as love, as you. We know that you have us all, and we are tired of being afraid. We would like to see all of our lives in a perspective of the perfect whole. So we open our minds to this now, that it may transform us in whatever we're ready for. We thank you so much, and we say this prayer now, in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everyone listening to the show today. We thank you for all of this, and we wish you a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week. Same time, same station, I hope with a better channel for Facebook Live, but we'll see. You know, guys, it isn't what we are doing. I have the most wonderful engineer in the world as a husband. But what it is where we are just doesn't have enough speed. So we're trying so hard to find some place that has a little better speed. I may have to just drive other places to make it so, but we'll find out how. Okay? Have a great week, and remember that loss is not the end. It's actually the beginning. Depends on what part of you you're coming from. You can do it. We're a team. I have faith in you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great week. Bye-bye.